Hey everybody, it's Morel with Phoenix Magazine. I'm here with Phoenix Magazine top lawyer, John Even. John recently helped me put together my estate plan. And in that process, many practical questions were raised, including something like, what happens if I were to become incapacitated? Who makes decisions on my behalf? Or if something worse were to happen, how would my assets be distributed? And I don't have human children, but I do have fur babies and I want them cared for. So who would take care of them? Over this video series, John is going to show me and my friends and colleagues, Matt and Madison, some options that will help ensure that our wishes are carried out, things won't be left to chance, there won't be any guessing, and hopefully be a little bit less of a burden on my loved ones. At the end of the day, have peace of mind.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt Johnson, Director of Digital Content here for Phoenix Magazine, and I'm talking with lawyer John Even here about, we're gonna get into wills and trusts. So John, my situation is I'm mid-40s, wife and kids, home, cars, you know, everything that if I were to leave this planet, what can I pass on to my family to ensure that they are taken care of in the unlikely event of my death? Will, trust, what kind of thing would you advise me on?
You know, those are all great questions. And Matt, the first time a lot of people think about doing something like a will or a trust is usually when they have kids. I know for my wife and I, that's when we did our first will on the way to the airport when we were leaving town, you know, after we had our daughter, like 27 years ago. So those are good questions to be thinking about, and really it kind of starts coming into mind at that point. You know, what do we do here? I mean, where are we going to leave the kids here when we go on vacation? God forbid something happened to us on vacation, who would take care of them? And that is the key question that a lot of young couples are facing and thinking about. Okay, what do we do here if something happened to that plane, God forbid? The things you're thinking about are really good things. Now, the other part of it is not only who's going to take care of the kids, but you know, how are we going to set this up so that the kids are taken care of financially, and who'd be in charge of that? And that's a whole nother aspect of it. And the will or the trust question really comes into play when you're talking about that, because a will can get the job done and has a lot of benefits and at least gives you a peace of mind. But a trust has some additional benefits, especially for young children before they're 18 or even 21 or 25, that you can keep things in trust, have somebody else manage it during their lifetime if they're younger, help them get through school, help them get through college, and then maybe make a distribution to them when they get a little bit older. So the decision between will or trust is really a key one. That's really the one that a lot of people ask me. In fact, I get asked that question almost every single meeting. Do I need a will or a trust? Or what's the best for me? Or another way of framing it is, what are the advantages of a trust over a will? And one of the advantages of a trust, there's really three main advantages. One of the advantages is with a trust, if you set it up and you properly fund it, a trust is going to avoid probate. And probate is just a way of administering your will through a court if you pass away. You can avoid all that with the trust, and it simplifies things quite a bit. The other thing a trust does is if you're incapacitated, in particular if you're incapacitated for a long period of time, it's a much better vehicle for kind of having somebody else manage your assets for you. And the final thing with minor children in particular is, what do we do with the distributions? How do we distribute the assets out? Let's say we sell our house, or we have some money in the bank or an investment account. What do we do with those assets if the kid's 10 or 12? Well, with a trust, you can hold it in trust until they're a little bit older and have somebody else, a trustee, manage those assets for them until they're 20 or 25 or 30. And a lot of especially young couples really like that option. So a trust gives you that flexibility with the distributions. So there are a trust is a little more complicated to set up. It's a little more costly to set up, but there's a lot of advantages to it. And I go through those advantages with my clients when I'm talking with them.
Okay, so how early are we talking about? You mentioned you thought about it right away when you first had kids. Mine are getting into high school age. What's your advice there? How early should parents or people start thinking about this stuff?
Yeah, I think you're at the right time to start thinking about that. I mean, when somebody has children to begin with, that's one time that people start thinking about it. Another time that people start thinking about it is if something happens to one of their parents or another loved one that they know, and they have an incapacity or they pass away. And then they think, okay, what do we have everything in place in case something happened to us like that? And the third time people start doing it is when they start thinking about kind of usually in their 40s or 50s, start transitioning. The kids are a little bit older, and they're starting to think about, okay, we need to plan for our retirement. How do we set this thing up? And as part of their retirement planning and transitioning after they've stopped working, what do we do with regard to setting up ourselves in case there's an incapacity, or setting up our children in case something happened to us?
Yeah.
So I think you're you're at the point now where it probably makes some sense. By the way, when some people, and this is a little bit of a side note, but some people ask me when kids go off to college, they ask, well, can you do a power of attorney for my children who are over 18? And what those kids, they may, get into trouble, unfortunately, or maybe end up in the hospital with an accident. And if they're in the hospital with an accident, who's going to be the one that's going to be able to make decisions for them? Well, you'd think parents, obviously, but having a power of attorney in that situation makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
for those college-age kids.
How do you fund a trust?
Well, after you get the trust set up, so you say, okay, trust is the one for me. I want to go with that, and then we get all the documents done exactly the way you want them. You sign them. We get a nice binder, and they're all saved in the system for you. Now, what do you do next? Well, you have to fund the trust. You have to title things in the name of the trust so the trust works the way it should.
Okay.
Okay, so like what kind of things? Like the assets that you own, like your house. Your house would need to be titled in the name of the trust. Like your bank accounts or investment accounts. Those would need to be titled in the name of the trust. I put your items in your house in the trust, in case, just whatever items you have in the house, I put those in the trust. Your beneficiaries of your life insurance, that needs to name the trust too. So everything kind of funnels through the trust. If you do a trust package, one of the things in the trust package is a funding letter that says, okay, now that you've set this trust up, here's your homework. You need to put these things in the trust, and here's how you do it. And I help them with a couple different things too. So that's really what I mean by funding the trust.
All right, just thought of something here, John. Final question. What happens in the event of, oops, I totally put it off and I forgot to get my will and trust in place? What happens then?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, if you don't have a plan in place, the state has one for you. And now that may not be the plan you want exactly. In your case, it may work out okay, because it would probably say everything goes to my wife, and that's probably the way you want it to go. In other situations where there's step families and other complications, or somebody's not married and they're single, they may not want to have it go to their siblings or other people. So having your documents in place gives you the peace of mind that everything's going to happen the way you want it to. The other thing is not only in terms of the distribution part of it, but also in terms of who's in charge. Arizona calls it the personal representative. It's just a word for executor. Who's in charge of your estate and kind of getting things worked out. And sometimes people, don't want to. Sometimes the state says, well, it's going to be this person here, according to the priority scheme. And that's exactly who you do not want to have in charge.
Right.
So having the right person in charge, and then having the right distribution plan according to your wishes instead of the state's wishes, really can make a lot of difference.
What does that default to, like oldest son, oldest daughter? How does that work?
It basically it goes, people, like it would go spouse in your case.
Sure.
Anybody named in the will first of all, and then spouse, and then children. Equally, and then it would, they would kind of, sometimes I've seen that happen too, where people have equal priority, and there's a dispute about, who's going to be in charge of something like that. So the long story short is, if you want to avoid all those disputes, any drama, as Morel was talking about earlier, or just any conflicts that might end up in court, if you get the documents in order, and you get them done the right way, it gives you the peace of mind to know, okay, I'm covered.
John Even, our top lawyer for Phoenix Magazine. Thank you so much for your time today, talking about wills and trusts, setting your loved ones up for financial security. I appreciate your time, John.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Happy to help.
Thank you.